Thank you, Texas Rural Funders, for hosting today's webinar. Really appreciate the invitation. Was shared. I'm Ann Graham, Executive Director of Texans for the Arts, the statewide arts advocacy organization. Our mission is to champion a vibrant and accessible creative landscape in Texas by cultivating an unwavering public commitment to the arts. And we work through there to secure and protect and grow the public investment in the arts through the Texas legislative process. And that's the connection to the hotel occupancy tax toolkit. So we're going to jump into that. When I look at the 5 key cross-sector issues on Texas Rural Funders webpage, each one resonates with me as a potential for partnership, collaboration, and cooperation with the arts and culture sector by 1, require or produce authentic community engagement in towns, counties, and regions. 2, directly address rural community identified priorities. 3, can be significantly improved only through a collective approach. And 4, offer the potential to be replicated in other parts of rural Texas. And 5, leverage partnerships forged by Texas rural funders. I feel that the arts is in very good company in this room. And again, thank you for the invitation. The economic development that I'm talking about today is around the quality of life and access to and engagement in arts and culture in rural communities and across the state, but with a focus on the Texas municipal hotel occupancy tax. While we champion the arts as essential to our lives, one way we do so is to aim to secure public financial resources for the arts and culture sector across Texas. We clearly support the world of private philanthropy as an important counterpoint to the private realm that Texas Rural Funders uses, both individually and as foundations, and how important your financial resources are. Our own work focuses on the public realm, and there's 2 primary means of securing public dollars for the arts in Texas, both through the legislative process. It's important to know about both, as they're funded through totally different legislative mechanisms, and they require a different advocacy approach every biennium. And we work through that legislative process to secure these funds. The first is the appropriation support from the Texas legislature as enacted through the state budget process for the Texas Commission on the Arts, our state arts agency. The TCA then grants out funds through a host of programs, many of which have an impact on rural communities. Many of you have likely heard of the Texas Commission on the Arts Cultural District Grant Program. There are a number of rural communities that have cultural districts. There's also the TCA's touring roster, whereby rural schools, libraries, and other facilities can seek financial support from the TCA to bring talented artists to perform in their communities all across the state. The second is the Texas tax code. Not very many people like Texas tax code, but the Texas tax code around the hotel occupancy tax serves the arts community very well. So this is where the municipal hotel occupancy tax lives. HOT funding, and what we'll share with you today, the HOT Toolkit, generously funded by the Houston Endowment in 2019 to 2021, is just as relevant today, and we appreciate the Houston Endowment support. Having both of these approaches through the appropriations process and through tax policy is vital to the Texas economy and to the arts and culture sector. From a sheer economic standpoint, in 2021, still coming out of the pandemic, tourism spending exceeded $76 billion and tourism earnings were $27 million. State tourism data shows that arts and culture tourists spend more money, stay longer, and travel in larger groups than leisure tourists. Over the past 50 years, as travel and tourism across the state has grown, as the number of hotels has increased with the advent of short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO, HOT revenues become a major player in the tourism economy, from convention centers to convention and visitors bureaus to the arts and culture sector as a foundation for your community's creative identity. Additional uses such as preservation and in some communities, sports facilities and beaches also grew to benefit from the hotel occupancy tax. While revenue was increasing, confusion over allowable uses of HOT, including how the tax code really works, who makes the decisions about the use of HOT, and how those decisions are implemented, became frequent questions fielded by our organization. So it became clear that a comprehensive resource was needed to make HOT accessible and understandable to stakeholders, and in our case, the arts, municipal, and hotel and tourism leaders, hence the origins of the HOT Toolkit. Let me start by showing a quick video about the HOT Toolkit. Evan, do you want to share the YouTube link, please?
Of course, one moment.
There you go. Should be sound. Thank you, Evan. Appreciate it. So there was a soundtrack, no text, so you didn't miss anything in terms of content, other than, sorry, you just didn't get hear the music. This video is a teaser for the full-blown and comprehensive toolkit. www.hottoolkit.com has all of the answers. That I'm gonna pose some of the questions that were in the toolkit and just make sure that we can answer them here today in more detail. One thing, if your rural community does not have a single motel or hotel or overnight accommodation, no Airbnb or VRBO, then it may seem like it's not as relevant for you. This is a tax that is determined when a visitor stays in an overnight stay in a hotel or motel. But there's also sort of a changing future for hotels and overnight accommodations, including things like agritourism, winery tourism, night sky tourism, which you may have heard about around the Hill Country and in West Texas. Or the ranch stays. I mean, there's a variety of ways that tourism is developing in new and creative ways. And so if you don't have one today, you may have means for collecting hotel tax in the future, so hang tight. And even if you only have a modest number of motels or overnight accommodations in your community, there's still going to be tax collected that could be used towards the arts and culture sector. So jumping forward, here's some questions. What is HOT and how does it work? Why are we so interested in HOT for the arts? How do I know if my community levies the tax and if they fund the arts through HOT? How do we define the arts and if we're eligible for funding? How can I advocate to make sure that my community supports the use of HOT? And why is HOT so important to our sector? I'll work pretty quickly through this. The hotel occupancy tax in the state of Texas is actually 3 different tax codes: a state HOT, a county HOT, and a municipal HOT. The state HOT was enacted in the mid-1960s and is set at 6%. You don't see the state HOT. Those go directly to the comptroller's office and to the state's general fund, with 1/12 of those funding going to the governor's office of travel and tourism. The municipal HOT, the one we're really looking at, was enacted in the 70s and is a 7% optional tax, though most cities that have hotels and motels levy the full 7%. And today we're talking again about this municipal tax. Levying a county HOT tax requires legislative action. You have to go to the legislature to get it approved. But you are increasingly seeing in the legislative process more counties levying hotel taxes in their counties. And unless otherwise stated, the county tax can be used for the same purposes and only the same purposes as the municipal hotel occupancy code. Except that it can only be 2 to 7%, and there's only 7 allowable uses. But the arts is one of those, which is very important. And your county commissioners would be responsible for managing the county HOT funds. HOT's purpose has consistently been to provide resources to support the tourism, convention, and hotel industry with 2 overarching criteria. First, every local hotel occupancy tax revenue expenditure must directly enhance and promote tourism in the convention and hotel industry. And second, every expenditure must clearly fit into one of 9 statutorily provided categories for expenditure of the hotel tax. Of the 9, the arts are just one. There's establishment of convention centers and visitors bureaus, paying administrative costs for convention, paying for marketing and communication around conventions, the arts, historical preservation and restoration, certain promotional expenses related to sporting, enhancement of some sporting facilities, transportation between conventions and hotels, and signage to direct people to conventions and hotels. So there's very, very focused again, and we're very interested in number 4, which is the arts and culture. Why are we so interested in the hotel occupancy tax at the municipal level? 1, because it can be the largest source of public funding for the arts in your community. And because access to HOT resources coupled with other resources like those of the rural funders looking at private philanthropy, foundation grants, local business support, maybe some other governmental agencies like the TCA or the National Endowment for the Arts, can support funding for arts and cultural activities across communities, whether they're public art or murals or festivals or any art form that could end up as a cultural and arts program in your community. How does it work? If you stay in a hotel and your room rate is $100, when you check out, your bill will say $113. $6 is the state HOT and $7 is that municipal HOT. Most importantly, in 1977, the state language was changed to allow for up to 15% of the municipally collected hotel tax could be used to fund the arts. May be used, could be used. And this was happening in a time when Texas leadership was reflecting on whether or not international and national corporations would relocate to Texas unless they had cultural amenities. What would attract families? What would attract employees? What would attract educational facilities? And so they actually changed the legislative language to allow the arts and culture to be part of the municipal tax as a way to have a more cultured and artistic and creative state to attract corporate business. So this is truly one of the most important parts of this legislation. How do you know if your community levies the tax and if they fund the arts through the HOT? Those questions are posed in the toolkit, and I will send you all off with the web link and really ask you to explore it, and those answers are there. We passed legislation this last session, along with our partners, the Texas Hotel Lodging Association, that requires municipalities to send the comptroller information about all of those 9 allowable uses, the gross amount of tax collected, and how it's being spent in the state. And there's a chart, and it's linked on our website and the comptroller's website, so you can look up your community, how much they collected and how much they funded and what they funded. It's an invaluable tool, and that gets updated every year. And then you can also look on whether or not there's any arts. If there aren't any arts funding, then that's when we recommend that you follow some of our advocacy tools, which are in the toolkit as well. And that is to meet with your mayor and council and leadership and find out ways that you can actually speak up for funding the municipal hotel occupancy tax and using the arts. How am I doing on time here, Kelty? Am I doing all right?
We have about 1 more minute.
Okay. There's so much to go into detail, and I don't want to drag this on here, but do check out www.hottoolkit.com. It is truly an incredible resource, and it answers all of the questions. There's resources, there's a Q&A section, and there's also I just want to read one quote at the very end. I literally on Monday got an email from one of the communities that we have consulted with extensively about the use of HOT. And she wrote, "Dear Anne, our community has shifted art funding back to the HOT funds from our general fund. We have a new CVB director. I made her aware of the work you did on developing the HOT toolkit. She studied it and used the information you included in it. I think with using it, she will have a good plan for the arts community that most did not qualify for the way the previous director had art funding set up. This is the new use for the HOT funding." So we didn't ask for that little congratulatory note, but it was wonderful to be able to hear that the toolkit is being used. It's an effective tool. We're constantly updating it and making sure that it's relevant. And it's a vital source of funding for arts and culture, rural to large cities, and know that it has a strong and important place in the future of this organization. So thank you, Kelty, for the opportunity, and happy to answer any questions.